power. Listen to what he says. There's no remembrance of the things that come. We're in Ecclesiastes chapter 1. There's no remembrance of the former things, nor is there any remembrance of the things that will come after by those that will come after them. Verse 14 of chapter 1, I have seen all the works that are done under the sun, and indeed all is vanity and grasping after the wind. Get to that word grasping after the wind, and I finally found the definition that I like. It's called, hevel is the word for it, and it's breathing nonsense. So when he says that, and you know that, so you can say I'm hearing it, or I'm seeing it, I'm smelling it. You know, it's like the Matrix, it's the smell. But hevel, nonsense, vain, vanity, vexation of the spirit is that very thing. It's just breathing nonsense. But we say knowledge is power, and listen to what happens to the book of Ecclesiastes, in the book of Ecclesiastes with that, and that is that, number one, you get to the end of the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 12 and verse 12, there is no end to the writing of books. So I can present this lesson now, and I can come back in 5 years and do the whole thing again new. And there's no end to the preparation, the writing, the rewriting, the rearranging. There's no end to that. So whatever it is that you're engaged in, it's not going to stop. You think the project is over, but then what's next is the next project. But here's the bad part. Is knowledge power? Well, it's good and it's helpful. But look at verse 18. Ecclesiastes 1:18. In much wisdom is much grief. He who increases knowledge increases sorrow. What does that mean? Well, it simply means this. The more you know to worry about. I mean, if you traveled to Jonesboro, Arkansas 50 years ago, and you wanted to hold a gospel meeting, I would not have to come at 7:30 or 7 o'clock on Saturday night to test the electronic equipment to see if it's going to match up. I just had the book. Now, is it wrong to have this? No, it's an advantage. In fact, I told an elder, I said, you know, having a visual and verbal, it allows you to cut about 10 minutes, 7 to 8 minutes off of every sermon. And he asked me if I could get 2. But the point is the more you know. Who worried about a computer virus in 1970? No, we didn't worry about that thing. Is it wrong to have a computer? No. But the more we have, the more we know, the more we develop, the more things, the more you have to worry about. So you know what I think I'll do, and what the book of Ecclesiastes tells us? We're going to just pursue stuff. Look again, Ecclesiastes chapter 2 beginning. So I pursued, he says. Come now, I will test you with mirth. Therefore enjoy pleasure, and surely this also is vanity. He even calls it madness. That's what he says. And he had everything. Listen, verse 7. I acquired male and female, and I had servants, female servants, and I had servants born in my house. He had generational. He talks about the gardens that he built. He had the first sound system, but he bought them live. They didn't have amplification and audio, so he just bought the band and had them stay at his house so he could have music. He had everything that you could put on the list. And then that's when he said, in much wisdom is much grief, and he makes, so wisdom didn't do it. When he finally graduated college, it didn't make him happy. It didn't answer all of his problems. In fact, bam, now I'm on the ground. And I'm in this world. And he says, whatever my eyes desired, I didn't keep from him. He got it all. And then I looked at my works, verse 11, and the labor in which they had toiled. And indeed, this also is breathing nonsense. What profit is under the sun? Verse 17, he gets depressed about it. He has all this wealth. He has all this stuff. I hate my life because the work that I have done under the sun is distressing to me. And he says in verse 19, yet this fool who will come after me, wise or fool, and this fool may rule over my labor in which I toiled under the sun. So he just needed more stuff. And let me tell you about how that works. I'm sorry that the kids are in the back class, because that's a classic right there. That is a banana seat bicycle with high handlebars. Some of y'all don't know what that is, but buddy, I told my dad at 9 years old, you get me one of those, I'll never want another thing. And I got it. And then later on in life, it turned into that. And so you see, there is no end. But, after having that a few years and a cold winter and a hot summer and a wife talking to you going, how much you got in the garage? And it just sits there. So I said, okay, we'll sell it. But here's the reality of it. And let's take the bicycle, because I remember taking it once it had lived its life over to this recycling place. The bike. There it is. So I'm talking about some of y'all, because I make tents also for a living. When I started to work at the Little Rock Church there about 6 years ago, I started working in the furniture business to help support my family. And, you got stores that buy inventory, and then people walk in and they just, oh man, look at the stuff. I need the stuff. And you just got to find the stuff. And it looks like that in the display, and you get it home, and ooh and oh, and people come over, and then, and then a few years later, the stuff, what did he say? Well, it packs like that. It looks like that. And then, and I'm old enough now to speak this. I wasn't when I was here before. Only takes about 5 years to downsize twice. I paid someone to get rid of my stuff. I paid them, and a year before, I was like, oh, I need that. Oh, I need that. That's how our mind works. And then, eventually you can just go carve it out. I got too much stuff. And boy, in our world, we're not all hoarders, but we could probably go to a drawer and find out that we got this problem. I hated life. I hated my labor because I had toiled under the sun, because I must leave it to a man to come after me, and who knows whether he'd be a wise or a fool. This is vanity. I turned my heart to despair after all my labor, and I toiled under the sun. Here's the reality. The more you have, the more you have risk of losing. You get a new car, guess what you got to do? You got to go get insurance, right? If you had a little old clunky car, and then you go get one of them new high-powered cars. Yeah. The more you have, the bigger the house, the more insurance. I hate to do this to you, but the Ecclesiastes is trying as hard as he can to say this. If you love silver, you'll not be satisfied with silver. You can get a bag, and you'll just want another bag. And you get another bag, then you want 2 more bags. And that's how it works. It never says enough. So, about halfway into the book then, in chapter 5, he starts really looking for some reasons. And chapter 5 and verse 12. The sleep of a laboring man is sweet, whether he eats little or much. Now there's a secret in here. Young men, pay real close attention. Everybody, pay real close attention. Some of these verses in the book of Ecclesiastes are so powerful, we read right past them. The sleep of a laboring man is sweet. Are you having trouble sleeping at night? What should you do? Work. Get up. Get up and go to work. So, and we're all of these will parallel with We start talking about addiction on Wednesday night. I mean, these are all going to tongue and groove into this distress that we're experiencing. Sleep of a laboring man, whether he has a lot or a little bit, he's in this content state. The abundance of the rich will not permit him to sleep. He's worried about his stuff. The sleep of a laboring man is sweet. Now flip back, chapter 3. Because we have the time for every purpose under heaven. And this is where Solomon is now trying to get us into the deep part of the water. Everything, there is a season and every purpose under heaven. That includes 1911 and the Spanish flu. And I started in 2020 making this statement. Get ready for a revival. Get ready for a revival. The pandemic hit. You had the roaring 20s, which was extremely bad. You had the restoration 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. Fastest growing entity in religion was the church. Now, it may not be you. It's you to lay the groundwork for them back there, for the revival that sets all of this stuff in proper perspective. A time for every purpose. And he says there's a time to be born and there is a time to die. That kind of puts us into a solemn thought process. Some areas in the world, they celebrate when someone dies and mourn when one is born, realizing the struggle there will be for the next 70 years, God willing, and then the release from the struggle when we depart this life. Which leads us to, like I said, today it's about getting happy. We're going to do the joy, and we're going to say, "It is well with my soul." Tonight is very much about just singing and finding a place in our hearts where we can be well. Because for us, we need to be well to help others. We need that comfort so we can comfort those with which we are comforted by God. 3:11, Ecclesiastes 3:11. He has made all things beautiful in his time. He has a timetable. The nature of things. Really. All things beautiful in his time. It doesn't appear that way to us. But here's what the text tells us about chapter 3, verse 12. I know nothing is better for them than to rejoice and do good in their lives. This is go back to verse 11. Let's capture the whole thing. He has made everything beautiful in its time. He's put eternity in their heart, except that no one can find out the work that God does from beginning to end. So you see, you are living in a bit of an enigma. We're going to see at the end of the class what that enigma looks like today, and it's beautiful. But you are in an enigma. You don't know everything. Secret things belong to the Lord our God, and there are things that come out of very tragic incidents that God says, yeah, I overrule. I know there's nothing better for them than to rejoice and do good in their lives, and that every man should eat and drink and enjoy the good of all of his abundance. Of how much money he's got, he wins because he's got all the possessions? No. That he would enjoy his labor. The work. It's the work. The joy is in the work. If you, in your job, live for the payday, how long does that last? One day. If it's a weekly job, you get paid. So you enjoy your job for 30 seconds when you receive the check. And you don't like your job 5 days. If you like the labor, you got 5 days and the check automatically comes. How different is your attitude? Monday. You see, it changes everything about how we see it. And it's because when God is acknowledged, this book that really doesn't acknowledge God in this is life under this life, when it says it is the gift of God. What's the gift of God? To work and to enjoy the ability to eat and to drink, to have a good meal, just to function and to glorify Him in that. Everything beautiful in His time. So, you say we ring at 15? Okay. Got to talk about a couple of things, and so does the book of Ecclesiastes. Injustice. Chapter 3 and verse 16. He just told us to enjoy and drink and enjoy the good of our labor, which it is the gift of God. And then I in my note I put but, and then I have a line drawn down to verse 16. In the place of judgment, wickedness was there, and in the place of righteousness, iniquity was there. You go to court, and you're in the right, and the judge is corrupt and makes the wrong decision. That's the decision. What's your option now? Well, if it was a loss, then I'll see you Friday night, and we'll answer that on how to live with loss. In fact, I changed the title on Living with Loss, Life as We Know It. Loss is life as we know it. We just don't like it, but we need to understand it better so when it happens, we don't get disrailed. And you've met people that are like that. So, there's a vanity in chapter 8 and verse 14. Chapter 8, Ecclesiastes 8:14. There is a vanity which occurs on the earth, that there are just men to whom it happens according to the work of the wicked, and again there are wicked men to whom it happens according to the work of the righteous. This is also vanity. Bad things happen to good people. In Ecclesiastes, the writer is just looking at it saying, hey, this is not just. It's breathing nonsense. It's a factor in the world that God permits because He permits man to choose a life. And we all have that beautiful ability. And here's the unfair or the aspect of it that I don't like. And her name is Ruby. Went to church with her when I was a little kid, but I don't really know her well. Knew her granddaughter and visited her home a couple of times when she was in the last moments of her life. Had stayed there. And she had spent the last few years in that condition and really separated from everybody except her granddaughter and a few that would check on her. Now, in 1981, that placard is something that someone gave me because they had given it to a young man. Ruby had given it to a young man during Bible class in 1981. And if you read the little caption beside that I cut out of the paper, that Ruby, Little Rock, departed life, there will be no funeral service. There will be no memorial. Breathing hevel. Breathing nonsense. And truth is, she was a member of a church all of her life, a couple of them. And the filter of years and lack of connectivity left us in that place. So I had my own memorial right now. Ruby handed a child in class. Let us hear the conclusion of the matter. Fear God and keep His commandments. This is the whole duty of man. And she died. try to make sense of that. You go to chapter 9. I think it's interesting. Chapter Ecclesiastes, life under the sun, is 911. It's 911. 9/11. What does that mean now? Whoa. Well, people got out. People didn't get out of the buildings. But here's what we see is the race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, nor bread to the wise, nor riches to men of understanding, but favor, nor favor to men of skill. But time and chance happens to us all. And friends, that is one thing that you have to factor into your life. And it's time and chance. It's life. It's not unlucky and it's not lucky. It's time and chance. It's a factor that will go on. And no matter where you are in the indulation of life, there will be those moments that you'll have this everything. There'll be moments when you'll have this nothing. And it is a time and chance. And he says, man does not know his time. Tragedy falls. It comes upon us. And chapter 3 and verse 20, just to go back and get even further perspective on that, our destination, all go to one place, all are of the dust, and all return to the dust. Now that is dirt. That's dirt. If you put water on it, it's mud. But look, in Ecclesiastes 12:5, it says, man goes to his eternal home. I like the King James in this one because it says, man goes to his long home. So no matter what you are experiencing in your life, whether you're looking for a place, you're looking to sell a place, you'd like to buy a place, you'd like to grow a place, you'd like to have this, you'd have that. Listen, no matter what we do, we're not home yet. Yes, feather your nest, and yes, we have learned in the last 2.5 years to seek out creature comforts. God has blessed us in many ways, but never sit there in a place and say, oh, this is the perfect place, because it's not. It's a temporary place. Perfect ain't temporary. Remember the first slide there when we had the older and the younger together and the abstract reasoning? I brought that in just for this reason, because you people of faith are involved in some very abstract reasoning. Through the week, when you talk about cognitive therapy and disability and things like that, or cognitive therapy and depression, that's the new 40-year term for psychology, is cognitive therapy as the most effective. And I go, oh, I love it when they discover these things, because Proverbs says, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. I say, well, they got that one down, and now you can listen to hours upon hours of them talking about it. I said, that's how you think. We'll have more to say about that later. But here's how to think. Couple hours, lunchtime. What if they interrupt and said, no, we're not eating today. We're going to the house of mourning. Somebody over at the nursing home has passed away. We're going to just go hang out with him for a while. It says, better to go to the house of mourning than the house of feasting, for that is the end of all men, and the living will lay it to heart. That is abstract reasoning. That flies in the face of everything that I, Dennis, would say, hey, what are you going to do? You go to the funeral this Saturday, or you going to go out and let's eat? Well, you know what we want to do. One is pleasurable, the other one is not pleasurable. Better to go to the house of mourning than to the house of feasting. That is the end of all men, and the living will lay it to heart. Somewhere in between the reflections of that skin, in the core of that mind, in that spirit, is the one person, is the human being. And the question is, how can we learn how to be human in the face of Hevel, in the face of this? Now, okay, this is amazing to me because we look at the depression of Ecclesiastes brings to us. If you look at it in the temporary things. But the reality is that life under the sun takes everything away. It puts the reality, when we said temporary, that means everything. This building, our lives, relationships will be changed because of death or things that occur. They're altered. These are the realities. But faith and hope and love, when you take all of those things away and you as a human being, being human, there's only three things that really remain. And I want you to think about this as we ingrain this. There are only three things that are within your power at all times. Look at what happened in the Ukraine. What a tragedy. And taken, broken. Those things happen. We never thought that they would, but it's a tragedy.